FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Today's show is brought to you by Blue Sky Uranium Corporation. Blue Sky has first mover advantage in Argentina in the world's newest uranium and vanadium district. With an existing near-surface deposit that's open for expansion, Blue Sky also controls a massive district-scale land package with mineralization along a 145-kilometer-long trend. Blue Sky possesses tremendous exploration upside and is an excellent leverage play on rising uranium and vanadium prices. The company is run by a best-in-class management and technical team with proven exploration and development success in Argentina. Blue Sky Uranium trades under the ticker symbol BSK on the Toronto Venture Exchange and as BKUCF on the OTC. For more information and to stay on top of the latest news, go to blueskyuranium.com. That's blueskyuranium.com.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 4/22/19. Hey, as always, be a part of the show and email us kl@kerrylutz.com with any questions or comments. Best part of my day, they're about to open a new subversive coffee shop right around the corner from my house. So I will be able to walk there. And while I'm walking there, I'll read your emails and have a good chuckle along the way. Well, hey, speaking of having a good laugh, it seems like comedy is infecting politics. Hard to believe, you think? Well, look at the Ukraine. They just elected a comedian, a retired comedian. Do comedians ever retire? I think he's like Christopher Steele, former spy Christopher Steele. We have former comedian now is going to run the Ukraine. But more important than that, let's get on with John Rubino and take a look at the latest COT report. You don't know what COT means? It means commitment of traders, and banks are required to make disclosures about their holdings of commodities. They're required to file it. I think it's monthly, but John will correct me on that. And you can glean a lot from what is going to happen to metals prices from that COT report, even now. John, so COT or bust?
Hey, Kerry. Well, yeah, it happened again with gold this year. We had the really nice January, February seasonal pop when all the Asians were buying gold to give to brides and grooms for wedding presents. And it peaked at 1340, 1350, which is this big resistance level that is held for the past 5 years now. Every time it gets up there, it gets smacked back down, and it happened again this time. So combine the normal seasonal fluctuation with a big swing in, as you said, the commitment of traders report. In other words, the structure of the futures market in gold, which is where a lot of speculators place their bets on gold, and a lot of the commercial traders place their bets in order to get gold shipped to them for fabrication. Early in this year, it was fairly favorable because speculators were very short, and they tend to be wrong at big turning points. So you had this really nice couple of indicators coming together. Seasonality was favorable. The commitment of traders report was favorable because the speculators were way too pessimistic, and it worked. Gold and silver went up for a while, but then both of those things shifted. Seasonality ended. Now we're back in the sell in May and go away period when Asian buying tends to dry up, and that usually leads to somewhat weaker prices. And at the same time, the futures market got very, very unfavorable. Speculators swung from being pessimistic to optimistic in a really short period of time. It just took them a couple of months to go extremely long. They got really pumped about the prospects for a big run in gold and silver, and that led the structure of the futures market to become unfavorable. And lo and behold, gold and silver have gone back down, just as usually happens. See, this time around, there was some hope that gold would pierce that resistance level and just keep on going because the fundamentals are so great. You have insane amounts of debt being taken on, yada, yada. All your listeners have heard this story before. But it didn't happen. Now, the nice thing about these cycles is that even when you're stuck in an unfavorable part of one, it's going to change in the future. And it's already looking like the Commitment of Traders report, at least, in other words, the structure of the futures market, is heading back to favorable. The last week had a huge shift in the commercials going less short and a little more long, and in the speculators going less long and dramatically more short. So one more week, like the last week, which ended on last Tuesday. So in other words, the trading that is going to go in the next report has already mostly happened. And it was pretty unfavorable for gold and silver, which means that probably the trend of the speculators getting pessimistic and the commercials getting optimistic continued. But if we have one more shift like we had last week in the report that comes out this coming Friday, then you could say that the Commitment of Traders report has shifted to positive. And that at least is indicating that a bottom is near for gold and silver, and another upswing is in the making for the next few months. So we'll see. But at least, that one indicator is starting to point in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Just when you thought it was safe to go outside, it's not, right?
Well, these cycles repeat and repeat and repeat. And for the past decade or so, or longer with seasonality, but at least for the past decade, for the COT report, you fight them at your peril because they have tended to work. And it's really tempting to think that fundamentals are going to swamp the technicals at some point, just because we're making the kinds of mistakes that have historically led to huge runs in precious metals and dramatic declines in the value of the currencies in the countries where the mistakes are being made. That fundamentals will just swamp these technical indicators, but hasn't happened yet. And if it's not going to happen anytime soon, then at least you've got the cycle. At least that when the speculators in the futures market get too pessimistic, that puts a floor under the price of gold and silver. And when the end of the year approaches, seasonality, that is the Asians' propensity to buy a lot of gold and silver at those times, that puts a tailwind behind the price of gold and silver. So we're heading back for that again. But the summer doldrums will, if seasonality still matters, be another few boring months before the action starts again.
Yeah, and the action will come back, right? It always does. And
Kerry, we've got to keep in mind that the longer term trend is still in place, which is that the currencies of the world are being debased at an accelerating rate, and real assets are going to rise in those currency terms. So you can look at what's happening now in precious metals as just another chance to buy some more cheaply. And if you think of it that way, if you continue to accumulate, then the down cycle that tends to happen in the summer and early fall is that's when you do your buying, So if you take a long view, this is okay. If you need money right away from your precious metals, it's really frustrating. So, I feel the pain of a lot of people out there who would like to cash out and spend what they've made in gold and silver on other things, and who don't feel like they can do it because the price isn't up enough yet. That'll come with patience.
Very, very true. It's it's just amazing the things that happen in life, in our lives. You just don't know the way the future is going to unfold for sure. So it ain't over till it's over, till the fat lady is sung or whatever. Hey, we got a question here from our good friend and long-time listener, Jesse. Says, wishing us happy Easter. Question for John that baffles the fleece off of me. Since we survived Holy Week, how could the Atlanta Fed have begun the quarter so far off on their GDP estimates. Talk about resurrection from 0.2% to 2.8. I smell bovine blankety blank. And trust me, I step in it all the time. John, has the Atlanta Fed also become a lapdog for the political whims? Have a fantastic week. By the way, love the dual discussions. Maybe get both Powell and DiMartino Booth to discuss regulatory capture, LMAO. What I wouldn't give for that, Jesse. So what's your thought here, John?
Now, the Atlanta Fed tends to see really wild swings in its predictions because it is taking in data in real time. When that data bounces around, their GDP projection for the quarter bounces around as well. Normally, it goes the other way, though. Normally, they start out higher than the average economist's prediction and then gradually trend downward till they're way below what most economists are predicting. This time it went the other way. They started low and have gone high. And part of that is because we had this hangover from the equities bear market that happened towards the end of last year. That spooked a lot of people, caused them to spend less money. That's called the wealth effect. When your stocks are up, you spend more money. When your stocks are down, you spend less. And that and a few other things led to some really weak economic numbers. Now, in response to the financial markets getting volatile towards the end of the year, all the central banks out there have shifted gears, and now they're easing again. And China, in particular, is generating massive amounts of new debt. And presumably that debt is, the money that's raised by borrowing is being spent on stuff. And that's giving an impetus to growth around the world. And so some of the numbers that have come out just lately have been okay. As stocks are up, which is an indicator of future economic growth generally. Retail sales in the U.S. was up 1.6% in the last report, which is a big jump, far exceeding what was expected. And manufacturing in general is starting to pick back up, including, believe it or not, car sales. So you take those numbers, put them into the Atlanta Fed's model, and you get higher GDP for the quarter. That might or might not stay, because we could have numbers come out next month that reverse out the increases that we saw in the March reports.
Easily.
And one thing that's interesting now is we've got the stock market and the bond market saying different things, because stocks are up, which is a sign that people expect rising growth and rising corporate profits, but bond yields are down, which is an indicator that the fixed income market expects slowing growth, which implies lower corporate earnings and probably lower stock prices out there because they depend, at least to an extent, on corporate earnings. And so we don't know which of those two signals is true and which one is false, but they based on history, can't both be right because they're saying different things. So that's the thing to watch now. These GDP reports are data dependent, whereas the stock market and the bond market are predictive. In other words, they're telling you this is what we think is going to happen in the future. And they're saying different things right now. So those are the things to watch. Will bond yields keep falling, which would invert the yield curve even further? And that's a big recession indicator. And will stock prices keep going up? That indicates that that people who buy stocks and the companies that issue stocks are seeing positive things going on out there. So we'll see. One or the other will be proven right. And we'll know within a few months. Normally these kinds of divergences don't last that long.
Yeah, my guess is, it started off slow, partly because of the government shutdown, like you said, the hangover from the decline in the stock market the first quarter, and then all of a sudden, and the weather too. Let's not forget, the first quarter of the year, GDP-wise, is always adversely impacted by weather conditions around the country. We had all those Midwestern floods, a lot of bad weather, cold weather still coming from the Midwest, all these things. So I tend to believe it's not cooked, but then again, GDP is not the most accurate measure of wealth creation, of which we've been in a deficit of for a long, long time. and we're trying to get a guy from this YouTube channel, Blue Collar Economics, I think it's called. He just explains it all really well. Hey, so John, we've got this trend in politics where it looks like anybody who can crack a joke is all of a sudden a contender. Look, Al Franken, I couldn't stand him, but he was a comedian, and he was pretty good on Saturday Night Live before he became a complete ideological nutcase. Then we've got in the Ukraine, they just elected a former comedian, which I think a former comedian, like I said before, it's like a former spy. You never really retire from being a comedian. We're really into comedy here too, John. We've got, if you ever look at the website, Financial Survival Network, well, my personal, I should say not website, it's my personal Facebook page at Kerry Lutz. We post a lot of these Florida man things, and because the headline is always Florida man this, Florida man that. Well, here's a great one, John, and I don't mean to interfere with our normal content, but we're talking about comedy here. Deputies, Florida man's homemade pipe bomb sells into neighbor's yard. All right. So, like, what are you doing with a homemade pipe bomb, fooling around with it? And how did it wind up in your neighbor's yard? So the guy this was in Volusia County. He had to post $10,000 bail. You'll find it on the Facebook page for me, Kerry Lutz, but you should take a look at Financial Survival Network's Facebook page as well. But John, comedy. So without comedy, life is boring, isn't it?
Well, politics is, the old saying is, politics is just showbiz for ugly people.
Yeah.
And, we are in a stage now of the kind of post-capitalist world that we live in, where nobody's happy with the state of things. And they rightfully blame the establishment for the fact that none of these big systems work for them anymore. So the two main parties have a hard time breaking through now, because people are so disgusted with them that you've got to be an amazing Democrat or an amazing Republican to generate any real excitement. And so people are more and more open to outsiders. And that's Trump. I mean, most people know him as a reality TV show host.
Mm-hmm.
And in Italy, the head of one of the two coalition partners that run the Italian government now, he's a comedian. And like you said, the guy in the Ukraine is a retired comedian who is now, he won in a landslide. He didn't squeak in. He won big.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is that we are now open to outsiders with new ideas. And comedians are really good at presenting new ideas in ways that break through the clutter. Their job is to get your attention with things you hadn't thought of before. So that makes them really effective outsider politicians. So there's a big market niche there now. So don't be surprised if a lot of other performers try to jump into it, because we are open to what they have to say now. Yeah. Now, the problem is performers tend not to have a lot of experience in governance, because those are two completely different fields normally. So when we elect these populists in general and populist performers in particular, chaos usually ensues, because they obviously they don't have a coherent political platform. And they also don't have any experience with consensus building, which is what you've got to do to run a government. You're not the dictator. You don't just go in there and say, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this today. That's not how it works. You have to go in there and say, okay, what do I have to give you to get you to do this one thing here? And that's a whole different thing for most people. In most aspects of life, that's not how things work. And therefore, most of us aren't experienced in ways that would make us good leaders the minute we walk through the door. And that's true for all these populists coming in now. They're really good at articulating people's frustrations and validating people's frustrations, but they aren't necessarily any good at running a big system like a government. And that means we're going to have more and more chaotic politics going forward. Wait till we see who takes over in France after Macron is done.
Yeah.
And which he might be soon based on how all this is going. And Angela Merkel is soon to be out of power in Germany. And it's not clear who replaces her, but one of the right-wing parties that until pretty recently was considered a fringe party is gaining ground. And so they might have a coalition that includes people who weren't part of the government until very recently, or are not now part of the government and haven't been part of the government for years and years. And, that's going to be interesting because we don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know if Germany becomes a Eurosceptic country. What does that mean? Anyhow, you look at any part of the world and you get questions like that, with the exception of the dictatorships. The Chinese Communist Party is firmly in charge, and Vladimir Putin is firmly in charge in Russia, and they're looking like islands of stability compared to the developed world democracies right now. And that's a really scary situation when you've got the authoritarian governments being able to make quick decisions and the democracies being bogged down in political chaos. That historically that hasn't gone well. And it's something that we appear to be headed for. So politically, this is a really scary time, because financially, it's a really scary time. Those two things are obviously related, and they obviously are part of a feedback loop. And right now, the feedback loop is heading in a negative direction.
Yeah, I agree. And hey, if nothing else, even if they can't do anything, at least they're going to keep you entertained, right? They'll keep the jokes flying and keep things light, and might be going down the tubes, but man, is it going to be fun.
Well, it'll be fun for gold bugs, Gary. But I don't think a lot of other people will get the jokes. Yeah. And when they're being laid off and, and their city governments are going bankrupt and their pensions are being cut back to 42% of the original amount, that stuff's not going to be funny no matter how it's couched by the government. And all of that stuff is coming. I mean,
yeah. Well,
I've spent whole shows on just the pension crisis.
I'm going to change up a little bit on this because obviously the U.S. will be the last to fall. I think that's a foregone conclusion. All these European countries, there is going to be a flight out of there. As the local population gets more and more disenfranchised, they're going to leave. And whether the U.S. is becoming a totalitarian state or not, it's still the cleanest shirt in the laundry. And we're going to be getting a flood of Europeans here. I mean, it's already starting. I know it's coming. Places like Londistan, there's been thousands of acid attacks. They just throw acid on people. And, the word's going to get out.
Creative, though, Kerry. If you ban guns, they have to find some other weapon. Obviously.
I guess I'd rather be shot than have acid thrown on me, I got to tell you.
Wasn't London thinking about banning
knives?
The purchase of kitchen knives?
Yeah, right.
Department stores? Yeah, okay.
Because they're just, instead of supermarkets with steaks, now they'll just have canned jars of baby food there. So you won't have to cut anything up. You just use a spoon. And hey, older people already have to do that. Babies already do. So for the rest of the population, it's going to be great. It's going to be great for the baby food manufacturers. I guess Gerber. I don't know if there really are any other ones. Nestle, I think, owns Gerber's, if I'm not mistaken. I won't swear to it. It just seems to stick in my mind. So it's going to be great for Nestle, right?
Well, this is one of those aspects of life that operate for governments pretty much the way they operate for individuals. When you make a really bad decision, your life becomes consumed by the consequences of that bad decision, and you start doing things you never would have done before. But in the moment, you've got to take steps to fix the consequences of what you did before. And with governments now, they've all borrowed way too much money. They've all imposed a lot of rules on people that may or may not have seemed reasonable at the time, but don't make any sense anymore. And so much of, for instance, Britain, so much of their life now is dominated by trying to deal with the consequences of past mistakes. Now, Europe is like that big time now because they've created this huge bureaucracy to run these countries that have negative debt trends and negative demographic trends and a complete lack of faith in their culture. So you take those things and put them together, and you end up with all these these weird decisions that were made in the past that are now dominating the headlines and dominating the times of the politicians, and not leaving them time to do anything productive. And we've got the same problems in the U.S., but it's less serious here because we haven't gone that far down that road yet. But our debt trends are insanely bad. We're running $1 trillion deficits now, and that will only increase in the next recession or when the next government comes into power and institutes a whole bunch of new spending programs or whatever. So those are things we're going to be dealing with in the future. And our bad pension mistakes, where cities and states are now consumed by trying to pay their pension bills, which they can't pay anymore, at the expense of roads and libraries and schools, et cetera, et cetera. So we are headed for the same problem. But as you said, we're not quite as far down that road. So even trouble in the U.S., paradoxically, might make the dollar go up, because trouble here will scare the rest of the world and lead to them buying treasury bonds as a place to hide out, even though the trouble started here. That's how it's worked in the last couple of cycles, where the dollar does well, even when the U.S. is having big problems, just because everybody else's problems are magnified by our problems, and their problems started out as being a lot worse than ours. So very it's true. Completely possible that in the next cycle, we run into huge amounts of trouble here in the U.S., but the dollar goes up because of it, at least temporarily. In the end, a variation on Keynes's, in the end, or in the long run, we're all dead. But in the long run, all these fiat currencies are dead. It's just a question of which dies first and how fast they decline. And it's possible that the dollar is one of the last to go, but it's also a lock that the dollar is going. None of these currencies are viable anymore. Mm-hmm. And as we take on more and more debt, that'll become more and more apparent. So that's the big story that's out there. And all the rest of this stuff is sort of the interesting details that are fun to watch and in the headlines along the way. But the big story is the gigantic financial crisis that's out there at some point in the not too distant future.
Yeah. In other words, nobody gets out alive.
Yeah. Well,
Jim Morrison
no government-run fiat currency gets out alive. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
gold bugs will get out alive financially, but they're among the minority.
Yeah, agreed. Hey, well, I think we've done it for today. I think we're about done. So as always, be a part of the show and email us kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @KerryLutz, Facebook page Financial Survival Network, but also check out my personal Facebook page where I deal with Florida Man. I'm seriously thinking, John, about starting a Florida Man podcast, because it's like, who was it? Snyder, Michael Snyder, Economic Collapse blog. He came up with a story of the 30 top Florida Man stories, of which I knew most of them, and they were downright hysterical and disturbing. And, because like the headline is Florida Man. I don't know if it's become a meme in the news media itself, or they just do that, because you don't see South Carolina Man, Missouri Man, or Illinois Man. It's always Florida Man. He's always the culprit, and he's caused us so much trouble, but so many comedic and hysterical moments that he's worthy of recognition.
Well, the reason for that, Kerry, is that, it's the same problem that California has, where if life doesn't work out for you in Ohio, you don't just move to Illinois, right? You go someplace sunny and warm where at least you're not cold, and so you end up in Florida or California. So they've got all the homeless people.
Thanks a
lot. And you've got all the Florida Man.
Yeah, we've got
low
IQ. I think most of them are locally bred and probably locally inbred. I think that's probably what's going on here. Something happened, and I'm not sure what in this state. I don't know if it's too much sun and it makes your brain go mush, but something is definitely afoot here, and we're going to look into it, and we're going to come up with answers, John.
All right. There's a very funny TV show called The Good Place, and one of their main characters is from Jacksonville.
Oh, well, of course.
And so he is a nonstop Florida Man running joke. They went to a bank once, and the bank said, normally we have a policy of closing the bank the minute a man from Florida walks in.
And for good reason, too, I might add. Yeah. For very good reason. Yeah, you just can't make this stuff up. But, playing with pipe bombs, all right, like I can understand fireworks are legal in the state. Don't ask me why, but they're legal. All right, so responsible fireworks, hopefully not too many people get disfigured. But pipe bombs, so that's a whole new level of recklessness that really is almost shocking, Oh, it is shocking. Not almost shocking. It's shocking. So we're going to have to leave it at that. But anyway, John, enjoy the week. This is Monday, after all. Happy Monday to all of you out there. We will be back. I've got a person coming up next who is actually running for president, believe it or not, John. And I'm sure you know him. His name is a household word. His name is Tim Harris. And he's an environmentalist, self-proclaimed next presider of the United States. And I don't know, I'm feeling optimistic.
All right. Well, we need more presidential candidates.
Yeah, we don't have enough.
Encourage him to run, yeah.
All right, John. We'll catch up with you next week. Be well, my friend.
You too. See ya.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 4/22/19, last show of the day. But keep tuned. There will be more, I promise. We got a whole host of people for tomorrow and throughout the week. Just go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. You'll see what's on, what's coming up. Sign up for a newsletter. Anyways, it's a crowded field right now, at least on the Democratic side of the aisle, for candidates for president. It seems that just about anyone who can is running, and even some of the people who can't run are running as well. Well, we've got somebody here that you never heard of that you're probably going to want to hear about, who genuinely believes that not all hope is lost. His name is Tim Harris. You find him at restoreanation.nationbuilder.com, restoreanation.nationbuilder.com. Tim, hey, anyone can run for president. Tell us, why are you doing it?
Well, I actually had a bit of a wake-up call. I mean, I've been kind of a fun guy that has enjoyed a lot of life. But I guess my call to action, let's start with that, is that I was sitting there sort of minding my own business. And, anybody with a child has had to chase after them before they headed into the street. Or, unfortunately, a lot of us have gotten a call about a dear family member that was in the hospital. Well, when those kind of things happen, that puts everything else that you thought you were going to do on the back burner. Love this country, served it as a veteran, but when the last two presidents that we've had in office did more to create separation and anxiety, and there seemed to be, the fight has gotten intense. I think somebody needs to show up that's an adult that can put all these high school and teenage behaviors behind us so that we can pay attention to the 8 or 10 things that have to get done in order for our society to continue.
Okay, so what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? It sounds kind of impossible, what you're proposing.
Well, if somebody goes to my site, which, let me clear up one thing, it's restoreanation.com. If they just type that in, it'll take them right to the site. So it's restoreanation.com.
Okay. Didn't come up there on the site that way. So,
I mean, an easy thing to point out to people is the environment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why a lot of people have come up with this new deal and did a photo op. But they've been doing photo ops since the 60s. And they'll pass a non-binding resolution, which makes everybody say, hey, this is really important. And then Congress has allowed both Democrat and Republican Congress, Democratic and Republican presidents since the 60s, have pretty much allowed the money train to show up and tell them what they were going to be concerned with. We're at a point right now, and I'm not talking about global warming. I'm not talking about, any certain title. But there are things going on in our environment that are critical. For example, the storms that we've been having. When I was a kid in the 60s, we had storms, but they only showed up about every 5 years, not 4 or 5 times a year at each corner of the country. You want me to explain how I'm going to fix part of this, right?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. So we have currents in the ocean, and then there are in either ocean, there is a place where these grand currents come together. Where those grand currents come together, I wouldn't call it a continent of plastic, but we've got huge plastic depositories. The weather textbooks, the weatherman textbook for meteorology, say that the temperature of the ocean is directly related to the severity of a storm. They've even talked about it on the news. If you take a plastic jug, whether it's warm outside or not, and put it in your window, that water's going to get warmed up. People use that to make sun tea, okay, whether it be in a glass jug or a plastic jug. Sun passing through that kind of material causes it to increase in temperature. If we clean up that plastic, now, here's how you do that. We currently have 15 to 17 naval destroyers that have been mothballed because they're coming out with a new version, unless the radar will bounce off of. So we have these in mothballs. They're not dead. They're not destroyed ships. We take those out with crews and we put in a dragnet and we draw most of that plastic up. That plastic comes up, then it comes back to the United States. It's recycled. Okay, the industry itself will support recycling, just that they haven't been rewarded to. Okay, so, but there are other ways that this can be done. You can bring it up to a barge where this plastic is heated, then you use heat replacing technology to basically cool off the water that's around these barges, basically sort of creating like a floating iceberg, which brings down the coolant of the water. And all of this, when the plastic is used and heated up, then those pellets come back to the United States, and we use those pellets as they have in European countries, mixed it with the asphalt, and it gives the asphalt more viscosity, and it'll be able to handle the heat and the cold better. This was as fast as I've ever tried to explain this. And when I say to you, if you go to my website and look at the environment, I have ideas that not only take care of that, but create jobs within all of that structure.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, well, it might. Has this been tried at all?
Has it been tried at all? No. But people haven't been trying things since the 60s because they haven't tried. Oh, you mean has the science been proven? Yes, the science has been proven.
All right. So,
but they haven't adopted it.
Mm-hmm. All right.
The Democratic Vice President Al Gore created this great big movie. What was it, 15 or 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
That didn't mean the science was flawed. That just means that it wasn't accepted. But we're facing a situation by which our environment is beating us up, and we need to do something about that.
So what about climate change here? Are we worried about this?
Well, our environment has changed. No matter what term or coin or ist is talking at the moment,
mm-hmm.
whether it be a conservativist or environmentalist, you can argue terms all day. What I'm saying is that there's a possibility of making positive changes in our environment so it's not so abusive.
Well, hey, I agree with you. Like a lot of what's going on in the world environmentally is terrible, but there's been a lot of improvements. I remember as a kid taking the New Jersey Turnpike into New York City, and you would see a yellow layer of sulfur dioxide, and it was just that was your sky view, your skyline. And now, for a variety of reasons, that is gone. So,
yeah. Well, I'm in Yonkers, about ready to take that roadway right now, and I know it's better than it used to be.
Yeah, so. The air is far better. In fact, the U.S.'s air quality has improved better than anyone else's in the world. We're still working on getting rid of coal-fired power plants, but they're pretty much gone in the Northeast.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Egypt is on the verge, once again, becoming a world-renowned gold producer. The golden age is being rediscovered. For millennia, ancient Egyptian kingdoms prospered from unparalleled riches. Pharaohs built their empires and flaunted their abundant wealth that was made possible by the country's resource-rich gold deposits. Despite this rich history, modern Egypt remains one of the most underdeveloped gold mining countries in the world. Aton Resources is at the center of the modern Egyptian mining world, diligently working both as the only public exploration company in Egypt today and as the advocate for mining reform with the Egyptian government. However, those that arrive early like Eitan will reap the best rewards. Eitan's discovery of the legendary Lost Mountain of Gold at Rodruin and its current aggressive drilling program there could potentially reap those rewards. Eitan Resources is focused on its 100% owned Abu Marawat concession in the Arabian-Nubian Shield, located 200 kilometers north of Centamin Sakari's world-class gold mine. Eitan possesses first-mover advantage in the under-followed jurisdiction of Egypt, which is currently undergoing mining reform. To stay on top of Eitan's latest drill results and news, go to eitanresources.com. Eitan trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker AAN and on the OTC under the ticker ANLBF.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Well, on the one hand, it's not as bad as some people have claimed it to be.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it is bad in some areas. I mean, would you like to take a drink of water out of the Lansing, Michigan, water system?
No, thanks.
Not me.
No, thanks.
But and I'm not saying that was due to poor environmental management, but there are problems that we can address.
Yeah.
Okay. There were any of the disasters that have taken place that have hit our coastline in the last 15 years have been ridiculously poorly handled.
Agree with you there. So, but here's the thing, Tim.
So what I'm saying is that we can do better. We have the technology to do it. And I can give you an example of that just in Puerto Rico. And this isn't about Donald Trump.
Right.
Okay.
I appreciate
I'm saying that these problems have existed for a long time.
Of course.
So
these are
we have the military sells off their leftovers, right? Through their logistics. Some of the things that they've sold off in the last couple of years have been power units.
Right.
Okay, these power units are carried into combat. It's not like you're going to drop them and break them.
Mm-hmm.
We could have easily dropped half a dozen of those or a dozen of those on every one of the affected islands in Puerto Rico, and the people could have had power. We have water treatment systems that are being sold off by logistics that basically when a battalion goes in, that's 500 men or soldiers, by the way, members. When a battalion goes into a unit, they bring one of these water treatment trucks along with them, and they can take sewage and turn it into drinkable water.
Right. Okay.
We could have used that either in Lansing or we could have used it in Puerto Rico.
Okay, but here's the thing. All right, I agree with much of what you're saying. It sounds great. What is your strategy to get elected here, Tim? Why should we treat your efforts here seriously?
Well, okay. Well, for one thing, I'm on your show.
Yeah, but a lot of people
seriously.
A lot of people are on my show, and they're not going to get elected president. Any of them.
Okay. Well, you remember when Bill Clinton got elected?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay. I'm not saying it's a celebration. I'm just saying, remember.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, sure. He got elected by the friends of Bill. According to him, that was the words he used. He basically had two people that he's maintained contact with in every state in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So about 2 years ago, I went out and I started crisscrossing the United States again, as I have done many times, not just because of the election, many times.
Mm-hmm.
And I have gone to every state in the United States, talked to people in every state in the United States, and the three biggest cities within those states, not just the electoral college important ones. Okay.
Mm.
And I thought, well, okay, if I could get two people in every state, then at least I'd have a foothold. Well, I didn't get two. I got 5, 10, 15, some in California, 25, in Nebraska, 14. I mean, I have all of these people around the country who have promised to support the efforts that I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No one had ever even heard of Barack Obama until Super Tuesday.
Mm.
Jimmy Carter was a complete surprise until after Ohio and New Hampshire.
But here's the thing, Tim. I don't mean to interrupt, but here's the thing.
Sure.
They were politicians, all right? They had followings.
Mm-hmm.
Clinton was governor, and before that, Attorney General of Arkansas. Carter was governor of Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
Obama was, a state senator, a community organizer, whatever that means, and then U.S. senator. All right. They all had sponsors. They all had people pushing them from behind. And, while they might not have advertised their infrastructure, they had billions of dollars behind them. Who's your sponsor?
Yeah.
Who's going to push you into the White House? If you tell me it's just going to be the people.
I don't have an answer to that question.
Well,
so maybe there's, okay, let me put it to you this way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's not a snowball's chance in hell of me getting there. Maybe.
I tend to agree with that.
But I'm not willing to write it off yet.
Okay. Hey, I admire what you're doing.
I'm saying that I have appointments with quite a few very wealthy individuals that are extremely concerned in the same areas that I am.
Yeah. We all share that concern.
I also have about 30 meetings set up between now and the first part of July, where I'm going to be meeting with individuals and community leaders across the country.
Mm-hmm.
A nonpartisan candidate has been elected president before. His name was George Washington.
Yeah, we've come a little ways.
And,
I hear what you're saying, and
okay, but hold on. Let me finish what I am saying.
Yeah.
Okay, and there has been an additional 5 presidents that were neither Democrat nor Republican. Okay, so the way that they did it is by being written in.
Mm-hmm.
Now, currently, we have a huge problem in our country where they're talking about people hacking into our voting system. Let me see them hack into your PIN.
All right.
So if people write me in, I'll win. If they don't, I won't.
All right. Well, hey, we applaud your efforts, and I know that your motivation is really positive, coming from a really good place, and we respect you for that, for taking a stand. And hey, maybe you can succeed where so many others have failed. So just tell us again, Tim, where do we find you? Where do we sign up?
I would love to have everybody within the sound of our mutual voices to check me out on restoreanation.com. Restoreanation.com.
Got it.
Yeah.
And
I would love to have them sign up, if for no other reason than to see what we're doing next.
Okay.
But I also am willing to take donations because we got to keep this going. But
keep the lights on.
I don't know where like you said, I don't know where the big sponsorship is going to come from yet, but we have a few things in the fire that might cook up.
All right. It's exciting times. Tim, thank you so much for coming on. Any questions, comments for Tim, myself? Email us, kl@kerrylutz.com, Twitter feed @kerrylutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. Tim, good luck. We hope we'll be seeing your name on the ballot come November.
Thank you.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Today's show is brought to you by U.S. Gold Corp. U.S. Gold Corp is a U.S.-focused gold exploration and development company advancing high-potential projects in Wyoming and Nevada. U.S. Gold Corp has consolidated a district on Nevada's productive Cortex trend and is advancing the Copper King project towards production in Wyoming, led by a team of prolific company builders and renowned explorers, including Dave Mathewson, who is directly responsible for several major Nevada gold discoveries. U.S. Gold Corp is well-capitalized and has an extremely tight share structure with less than 20 million shares outstanding and trades on the NASDAQ, a major exchange, under the ticker symbol USAU. To learn more, go to usgoldcorp.gold. That's usgoldcorp.gold.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 4/23/19. Well, when we last checked in with Nick Santiago, well, we've done it once since, but when we talked to him in December, he was emphatic that the market was not going into a bear market, that the stock markets were going to recover and probably hit new highs. Call was spot on. Well, what's going to happen next? That's the question. Is the stock market topping out, at least in the intermediate term? And what about earnings season? What is that going to do to the market? Are we going to get this end of the year rally? And what about precious metals? What about interest rates? 10-year? What about oil? oil's been going higher and higher, right? So without further ado, we're going to talk with Nick. But first, as always, please send your emails to kl@kerrylutz.com. We answer all. Love getting your emails. And there's a new left-wing coffee shop about to open literally right around the corner from my home. I'll be able to read your emails there, just walk there. So hopefully less travel time to that coffee shop. I'll be able to answer them even quicker than I'm doing now, which really isn't quick enough, let's face it. So, Nick, welcome back. And hey, stock market running out of gas. What's going on here?
Well, right now the pedal is still to the metal, but I think we're about to hit the brakes pretty soon. So, yeah, I am in the camp now that the overall market has come up into what we call a euphoric phase. And whenever that happens, you're going to see stocks make a reverse turn. In December, as you know, I was very, very bullish. I said once we get into the Christmas time period, we're probably going to see a big rally. And throughout the first quarter, that has happened. Now I'm really in caution mode at the moment. So I think you're getting a lot of talking heads on TV looking for a melt up and things along those lines. And that's, I think, been happening. I don't think that's going to start happening now. I think that's already occurred. So now as we go into the final end of the month in April, I think it is going to be a sell in May and go away. So I think traders now need to brace themselves. And this is not the time to get too optimistic about things. This is the time to be a little bit on the guarded side. The gains, the easy money has already been made. And now we're going to hit some major headwinds throughout the summer period for 2019. How
about sell in April and avoid the anxiety of May and the summer months altogether? Remember, last time you were thinking that the Fed is going to cut rates as early as September. So we'll get to interest rates in a bit. So what about the earnings? Obviously, that looks like it's being a bit of a drag on stock prices, potentially, right?
Well, so far we've seen the earnings announcements come in, pretty much as expected. But I don't really care so much about what these companies report as much as I care about the reaction from the market. So you've had a few companies really come in with some bad news, and the markets seem to buy up the bad news. So when the markets can absorb that, that's great, and that's what you get when you have this euphoric type of tape out here. But the earnings announcements have not been terrific. I think a lot of that was factored in when we got the December swoon. But now, going forward, we're going to really start to get the big companies reporting, and I think that is going to set the tone here as we go into the month of May. So I think the market is still in an uptrend. It's still constructive. We still have not taken out the September top from 2018 on the S&P 500. I think we can challenge it, maybe even pierce it, but I don't see us going much past it. And then I do think we're going to do an about face and see this market come back down. It's just the way that the things work. When everybody's all on one side of the boat, the market's going to go the other way. And right now what you're seeing is that the best moves come at the end of moves. And that's why, almost every day we see the S&P and we see the Dow starting to show a lot of leadership. That is a little bit of a warning when you get these big moves at the end of moves. And you got to be a little bit careful here.
Yeah. So we've had a big move. It's recovered all of its losses. Some of the indices are at all-time highs, right? And how are we going to know this for sure before it happens and you get slammed?
Well, here's one of the telltale signs that you look for. You look for a high-volume reversal day. And what that means is if you just take a look at the S&P spiders, that's a really, really good ETF to just track the whole S&P 500. And what you'll notice here, especially in the month of April, we have not even traded on a single day 100 million shares. So the volume has been extremely light really since the December lows, where the volume was extremely heavy. Back then, we were trading on an average 150 to 200 million a day. Now, since December, you could probably count on one hand how many days we've traded 100 million shares, which is not very heavy at all. But we've been averaging probably around 60 million shares a day. That is a very, very light tape, and light tape favors upside. So when you get heavy volume and you see the market go to new highs and then reverse that move, that's really a key cincher that the highs are in and we're going to go into correction or at least a decent pullback from that high level. So that's what I look for. Until then, I try to ride the trend out. That's what I've been telling my members. We're going to stick with the trend as long as we can. The old market adage is the trend is your friend until the end. And it's not over yet. Markets are still going up, but we're getting really, really close. And we got lots of signs that distribution is starting to take place as well.
Distribution. So, and it's always sends off alarm bells when you have higher prices on lower volume, right? It's telling you that the market is narrowing and that the demand isn't there, but that the supply isn't there yet either. So we see, so distribution effectively, when more people are getting rid of shares than want them, that's when we're going to see that reversal day.
Yeah, what will happen is you'll usually get a lot of volume. And in a light volume tape, that's the key now. You just look at, you could see in the month of January, not a single day where we traded 100 million shares. In fact, yesterday was the second lightest day of the entire year, with only 40 million shares traded. And I believe on April 2nd, we traded the lightest day with 40.07 million shares traded. So what we're looking for now is a high volume day. When you get that high volume day, that's usually a little bit of a hint or a warning that the markets are coming to a conclusion here, and they're going to reverse the trend. But the trend right now is still up, and we want to stick with it as long as we can. We have not hit the September highs, but we're getting very, very close to it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, and of course, as we know, and you told me this many times, all these markets are interconnected to some extent. So we have to look at interest rates because they're definitely a part of this. You still believing that the Fed is going to cut come September?
Yes. Nothing has changed there. Right now, you're going to see if any of your members have a chart, and this is something that I've showed my members here, is that when the 10-year U.S. Treasury note yield, when the yield fell down to as low as 2.35%, that occurred in mid-March, and that was when it hit the 200-week moving average. And I thought at that time we'd get a short-term bounce, potentially to go as high as 2.64%, 2.65%, and then I think yields start to head back down. So right now the market, even though they'll tell you they love low yields, they're rejoicing that yields have moved higher. But even today, where the market is up, you're looking at bond yields in this session. Right now, they're basically trading around 256. They're down 2 basis points. So it's a very, very strange tape. You have a lot of central bank intervention. You have a lot going on in Europe. You have people in Europe fleeing, coming into the U.S. dollar. So we have a Fed announcement that's also coming up on May 1st. But the reality of it is, I do believe that bond yields are going to go lower. I do believe once they start to crack, you're going to see panic in the market. People are going to say, oh, no, what's happening? And really, all you got to do is watch the bank stocks, right? Yeah. So the bank stocks recently have had a good run. J.P. Morgan has been rallying higher since late March, and it recently went to $114 a share. It was trading around $98 a share in late March. So as bond yields moved up, the bank stocks moved higher. But now, if those bank stocks start to come down, that's a really good indication that the current rally has ended, and we're going to see a nice pullback, even maybe even a correction of 7 to 10%. I would not rule that out.
All right, so let's go over to precious metals. Gold has not been performing well, but it's still showing pretty decent relative strength. It's down $7 or so right now, and what's up with that? What's your take?
Yeah, so gold has had an amazing run really into late February. It even surprised me. You remember, I was even shocked that gold was going up because I just didn't think it was time for it to go higher. Now you've started to make lower highs on the daily chart. Gold is pulled back. If you look at spot gold, I believe today it's trading at around $1,270. So all in all, I think gold can still retreat a little bit from here. I don't see a gold crash or anything like that, but I think it just got a bit ahead of itself as the market fears subsided. Gold has started to pull back, and this is just natural ebb and flow. So we talked about it, gold being in a huge range, and I just had a hard time thinking that it can go a whole lot higher. And I was actually even really surprised the way it was behaving. But what you want to do now with gold futures is let it set up and give you a really, really good pattern. But I don't see gold going much below $1,200. I think that would be a buying opportunity. Any dip below 1,200 is put your hands in a cookie jar and grab as much as you can. That's going to be a buying opportunity for gold. Ultimately, when you look at the bigger time frame, gold has been making higher lows since the bottom was put in December of 2015. It made a higher low on December 2016, and then it made another higher low in August of 2018. So as long as those higher lows are in place, it's buy every dip into that support area. So again, if we could get gold down to around 1,200, I think it's a buying opportunity. Ultimately, I think the day in the sun for gold is coming. Within the next couple of years, you'll see what I call the super spike that's going to happen. But there's a very, very bullish pattern on a big multi-year chart, and that's the way you have to really view gold at this point in time.
Okay, and oil's been heading higher. You see it at the pumps. We're back to $3 gas here in beautiful Florida. So is this just a blip? Is it going lower?
No,
What's up with it?
Not a blip. Oil's got a little bit more to go. Should peak out from my calculations. What I've told my members, I had a level at $60, and I had another level at 62 and change. Now my new resistance point, because every time we hit those levels, we pull back, but we consolidate the move, and then we go higher. So right now, the maximum level for oil is going to be around a Pierce of $68. Mm-hmm. So it's probably more around 68.25 to 68.50. Right there should be the peak for crude oil. I would say for several months. I don't see it getting above it, but I do think we can get to that $68 level now that we've taken out several resistance zones. The next big resistance level I have in play should be around a Pierce of $68. And then once we get there, we should get a pretty decent pullback in crude oil. I'm not exactly sure how much, but I think a dip back down to the low 60s, even the high 50s is likely.
Wow. So I heard 58 to 52 to 58. Somebody told me, is that in the realm of possibility?
Well, I would think 58 is probably a big support level looking at it now. If once we get to 68 first and then you can start to decline, I do think we'll probably test the 58 level. Below that is certainly possible, but I never like to look at a lower level until we take that first level out. So my first support level will be around $58.
$58, huh? Huh. Okay. Yep. And then, the markets tend to overshoot. We could see sub $50 oil for a short period of time, huh? Sure.
Crude oil has a tendency to always overshoot. That's why, I'm looking for a move to 68 first, Pierce of 68. Then once it starts to retreat, you get down to the low 60s, you break that, you test 58, you break that, then you go down to around 55, and then you'll see 52 was a major, major pivot back in February of this year. That'll be a big test. And then you really, you're looking at going back towards the lows that were made in December, and crude traded at $42 in December. So, 68 is kind of my max move. I know there's a lot of geopolitical stuff going on with U.S. and Iran sanctions. Then you have the problems going on in Venezuela. So, there's some supply, but there's an unlimited amount of oil already, even with those two countries offline.
Hey, and it's always important to keep in mind that Venezuela's oil is really substandard. The standard WTI light sweet crude, this is heavy sour crude. And there's only a limited number of refineries in the world, most of them being in the good old US of A, that can accommodate that crude. And that's the only reason why they kept the flow going all these years, is they didn't want to hurt those refineries that had retooled to accept Venezuelan crude. The only good thing about Venezuelan crude is it produces a lot of asphalt very economically because it's so heavy. So really, the world's not going to miss 1 million barrels a day of Venezuelan crude, especially look how production is ramping up in the U.S., like without stop, and nat gas as well. Nat gas is record production with no end in sight. People keep telling us here, Nick, well, they're not making any money. They're not making money off of fracking. And you know what? For an industry that's not making money, I don't know that the banks just will lend forever indefinitely. But for an industry that makes no money, they just keep producing a hell of a lot more of it. Is it like McDonald's? They lose money on every Big Mac, but they make up for it in volume?
It could be, but the reality of it is, when you just look at what the commodity does, there's still a need for it, right? We're not getting off of fossil fuels anytime soon. So that's really what it comes down to.
I had a guest on recently, and he's basically an anti-Westerner, but that's neither here nor there. But he's trying to tell me that solar and wind are like taking over China. And when you look at it on the surface of China's stats, it appears that almost 40% comes from quote unquote renewables. But then when you dig deeper into the numbers, only most of what they call renewables is hydroelectric coming from the Three Forges Dam. The rest of it is 6% solar, 2% wind, and not much more than in many states here in the US of A, like Texas has huge wind. It's not economical. It's not happening. The whole alternative energy thing is just still a dream here, Nick. We still need oil.
I agree 100%. In fact, you could just look at the founder of Greenpeace, who wrote a Twitter piece about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's new Green Deal. I mean, nobody could shoot it down better than he did, and this is a guy that was one of the founders of Greenpeace. So if you just look at what he said, the world needs fossil fuel, and it still needs it, and it will need it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, agreed, for sure. I've always been a skeptic. I don't mean a skeptic of like a naysayer, but just the realization that changes like this happen gradually. How long did it take to go from the horse to the car, right? It took like decades to do that. It
took a while.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden it caught on and it was like, oh, overnight sensation. It took 25 years to occur. The transition from oil to electric cars, if it in fact does happen, and I'm not convinced that something else isn't going to come along that is going to be better. Electric cars with these batteries are not the answer. Maybe it's compressed air. Maybe it's hydrogen fuel cells. I'm not convinced that the plug-in electric vehicle is the vehicle of the future. All right. It seems to me like it's a transitional stop, but maybe in 30 years we'll know for sure and it'll be all over and done. But electrical grid can't take it. It's just, it's a dream at this point, as much as I do enjoy the concept of electric vehicles. Hey, one other question. It's kind of the 900-pound gorilla in the room, the dollar. We still looking like same level, same channel.
Dollar's going higher. I mean, it's going to take time. It's not a soaring and roaring move. It's almost like a hurricane that just sits and lingers. It just travels slowly. But the dollar's going higher. I mean, think about it. Just look at Europe now. Mario Draghi just a few weeks ago came out and said, "Hey, things are slowing here. We're going to do more if we have to. We are not going to raise interest rates." So his term is up, I think, sometime next year. He's not going to try to cause any kind of problems in that economy, which is already, in my opinion, the worst in the world, a disaster. So again, I just see European money flying into the United States, and that's going to continue. I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Yeah,
and that just tells me the dollar is going higher. Ultimately, you'll see the U.S. dollar index, which is the dollar versus a basket of 6 currencies, and most heavily weighted currency against the dollar is the euro.
Yeah.
The euro will go lower, the dollar will go higher, and that's, I mean, the trend is there. I mean, there's nothing really to look at. When I was talking about the dollar putting in a bottom on this program a long, long time ago, people were laughing.
Yeah,
and here we are, we're looking at the dollar at 18-month highs.
We nailed it. So here's one other thing I'd like to point out. Every time that New York City real estate appears poised to take a big hit, something in the world happens and it sends people to the U.S., to the go-go markets to buy real estate. Every time I've seen it that I believed it'll go down for 6 to 18 months, but then there is a new crop of hot money, flight capital. The next flight capital I'm calling, Nick, is coming from Western Europe, from these Islamified countries, when certain elements of the population wake up and say, we got to get out of here. This place is bad. That's going to keep pressure on the euro. It's going to keep the dollar high indefinitely, and it's going to mask fundamental weaknesses in the U.S. economy. Because look, when you've got a couple trillion, 2-3 trillion a year in net capital inflows to your country, we've already got it now from dollar-denominated debts being paid back. All right, we got $1 trillion in that, and then we've got all this capital from countries where the people are scared or it's not respected, like in China. We're going to see a flood of flight capital coming to the U.S., and that's going to mask and presumably solve many of our underlying problems.
It's like that song by the Animals, we got to get out of this place. It's the last thing we ever do.
All right, and that is the headline here. We got to get out of this place.
And that's what's happening. That capital is fleeing. It's been going into the... Don't forget, people are underestimating, we don't give enough credit to the U.S. tax policy either. Now the U.S. is really, with the corporate tax rate being lowered, we've made this a competitive place to do business. And with a stronger dollar, the money flowing in, I don't see it stopping, to be honest. We're going to go through our bumps here. We're going to have corrections. We're going to have some, we might even have some crashes over the next few years.
Sure.
But the reality of it is the money is still coming into the United States, and that's really the bottom line.
Yeah. Hey, what about the presidential election impact on all these markets? What's your take here? I'm not talking politically.
Well, right now, when you look at this, I don't know if the left has a viable candidate. Honestly, I just don't know if there's anybody really
Elizabeth
to run.
Warren? Elizabeth Warren or Pete Buttplug? I think Pete Buttplug really could be the guy who just takes over the field here, Nick.
Well, listen, we're in some real trouble if that's the case. But I don't really know what to say. I don't understand how these people even get traction. They're just preying on just socialism. Bernie Sanders has just killed the healthcare stocks just because he's coming out with Medicare for all and all of these. These guys just don't know how to do mathematics, or maybe they never learned simple mathematics. But these days we have calculators. It's not that hard to do all of these policies that they're just trying to implement. And the one thing, Kerry, to get anybody to get off their butt and to start working, or to get anybody to do anything, you have to inspire. They just come up with these programs that are so, they're dire. They have no inspiration behind them at all. And it's a sad thing to see, but this is what's happening.
Well, I want to see everybody's debt all over the world forgiven. So Elizabeth Warren is my candidate, because I think she'll just say, don't worry about it. Don't pay it back. We don't care. And then we start from a clean slate. What's wrong with that policy, Nick?
Unfortunately, that policy may happen one day in the next 10 to 20 years. So I wouldn't, it's sad. It's really, really sad. But, when you just hear about these things, it's just, they're just trying to outbetter themselves. You got that, the Yang character, he wants to give $1,000 a month to everybody, and, free cell phones, free TVs, and free everything.
Well, I'm voting for Tim Harris, the candidate you never heard of and you never will hear of.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know him.
You're never going to. Don't worry about it. He's a guy from Yonkers who thinks he can get elected president, and I like the guy, but he has as much chance as well. Pick your candidate on the Democratic side. So, but point is, spending is up, and currency creation is up. So the economy is going to continue up, right?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I believe we'll get a little, like I said earlier, a little swoon here in the summertime. It could be, a little bit scary, and then we'll go right back up.
Yes. All right. Hey, so I should have mentioned earlier, you find Nick's work at inthemoneystocks.com. Nick, just tell us what offer is available.
Yeah, come on over. We have a 7-day free trial to our intraday stock chat room. We got lots of earnings plays going on here, lots of trades. We just took a nice trade on Twitter and made a little bit of money there. So again, and we have our research center. You get all of our work. You get all of my work in the daily market report. I put that out each and every night. I walk you through everything that I'm seeing as far as the S&P, gold, the 10-year U.S. Treasury note. Also, we look at individual stocks as well. So there's just lots and lots of content out here. Come on over, take that 7-day free trial to the intraday stock chat room or the research center, and you get all of my work.
Hey, you know what I like about you, Nick? You have the same philosophy as I do. May be wrong, but I'm never in doubt. And that's certainly the case here. So anyways, hey, questions, comments, be a part of the show, write us. Email address is kl@kerrylutz.com, and the Twitter feed's @KerryLutz, Facebook page, Financial Survival Network. And if you're listening on to this show on any platform, podcast or YouTube, please subscribe, like, and share. Really helps us a lot when you do that. Helps get ideas out like Nick's. And Nick is an uncanny forecaster, documented history of making major calls months before it happens correctly. Nick, we always appreciate you coming on, and we will talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, Kerry. Can't wait to be back.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 4/23/19. Well, is this the end of La La Land? Is La La Land coming to an end for the for the stock market? Well, Ned Schmidt's got his ideas for sure. Hey, pork is sizzling right now, and I'm thinking of starting a new service, pork futures in the supermarket. You just go buy 50 or 100 pounds worth of bacon and wait for it to go up in price. Even if the price goes down, at least you still got the bacon to eat. And as always, email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, Ned, it's always great to have you back on. Your publications are invaluable, and, well, interesting times ahead for sure, isn't it?
Yes, that's true. And, we've been in La La Land here in the stock market, U.S. stock market, since New Year's Day. And I'm thinking that is starting to look tired for many reasons. I've been watching what the Federal Reserve has been doing with its bond portfolio. And they have reduced that bond portfolio by $500 billion. That took them a lot of money out of the U.S. financial system. And if you overlay on a graph of the Federal Reserve's bond portfolio, U.S. stock market returns, and despite many people having forgot about it, the U.S. stock market went into the end of December in miserable shape. And that decline in liquidity had been explaining the deterioration in stock market returns up till December. And then something different happened, as we all know. What happened is the corporate buyback became overwhelmingly dominant. In the two quarters, one being the last quarter of 2018 and the first quarter of this year, corporate buybacks were, to use an approximate number, $450 billion. And they set a record in both of those quarters. And in the 5 quarters ending March, they bought back roughly $1.3 trillion of their stock.
Mm-hmm.
That just overpowered everything and gave us this mania we've had since January. Now, they may have another $1 trillion. I don't know if they do or don't. But it probably, after you spent $1.3 trillion, you've got a lot less money to spend on corporate buybacks.
Mm-hmm.
And that is fall off in that spending is going to make stock market returns look ugly again.
You think,
and probably drive people to look back at gold and silver. And there's no reason now for the dollar to go up because the Federal Reserve has adopted their WIMP policy, which means they're scared of damaging the stock market. So they're going to continue the WIMP policy all year. And ultimately, that got to help gold and silver. I mean, that's the only asset that is primarily tied to the Federal Reserve having no policy, which is what they have now. And as we painfully watched this last month, gold and silver have come down. This is my personal work, and it's saying Thursday. This is Tuesday. Kerry and I are talking.
Mm-hmm.
That Thursday is probably close to the end of that weakness. So if you're looking for a time to add to your gold and silver, I think Thursday would be it of this week to start doing so.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you really think?
Go ahead, Kerry.
So you really think we're hitting the end here, huh?
I do. I mean, after you've spent $1.3 trillion, there's not the same amount of money left. And remember, none of this money was being spent as an investment.
Right.
It was being frittered away, buying back stock. And then you look at the nonsense in the market. I mean, the IPO market is going crazy. Taxi cab app. The world doesn't need a giant taxi cab app.
Are you sure? Are you sure about
look
that?
Around, and I think the cure for cancer would have been far better.
Mm-hmm.
Kerry, we run our economy in basically stupid mode.
Yes, we
I mean,
have.
how much money has this country frizzled away on useless social networking sites and taxi cab apps?
Yes, very true.
Mind-boggling. So I think that frenzied IPO activity is indicated. That usually happens at the end of a run. It doesn't happen at a bear market bottom. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure of that, Gary.
Inclined to agree with you. Hey, what about these declining claims for new unemployment insurance? Also indicative of a peak, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. economy is doing well. And it has been doing well for so long that the growth rate has to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to look faster. The U.S. trade numbers for the last 5 months have not made any sense. But since we have a net import situation, or I want to say our net exports are negative, that goes into the GDP calculation. So it's going to be a less negative than was originally thought. So we may get a good number for the first quarter, and that may make people start throwing away their Fed funds forecast. Probably will eliminate the few that are saying it's going to go down. I don't see how that's going to happen. But
Interesting. So, so you think it's that imminent, huh? Gold, precious metals prices going up. We're that close to it.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next.
Egypt is on the verge, once again, becoming a world-renowned gold producer. The Golden Age is being rediscovered. For millennia, ancient Egyptian kingdoms prospered from unparalleled riches. Pharaohs built their empires and flaunted their abundant wealth that was made possible by the country's resource-rich gold deposits. Despite this rich history, modern Egypt remains one of the most underdeveloped gold mining countries in the world. Aton Resources is at the center of the modern Egyptian mining world, diligently working both as the only public exploration exploration company in Egypt today and as the advocate for mining reform with the Egyptian government. However, those that arrive early like Eitan will reap the best rewards. Eitan's discovery of the legendary Lost Mountain of Gold at Rodruin and its current aggressive drilling program there could potentially reap those rewards. Eitan Resources is focused on its 100% owned Abu Marawat concession in the Arabian-Nubian Shield, located 200 kilometers north of Centamin Sakari's world-class gold mine. Eitan possesses first-mover advantage in the underfollowed jurisdiction of Egypt, which is currently undergoing mining reform. To stay on top of Eitan's latest drill results and news, go to eitanresources.com. Eitan trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker AAN and on the OTC under the ticker ANLBF.
The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.
No, I think we are. Like I said, I think late this week we should see the end of this selling. And this selling hadn't really been selling. You know, when you can make more money flipping nonsense in the stock market without any brain work,
not much risk.
Traders
either.
just leave markets like that. I mean, they're out of gold, they're out of corn. You know, there's no point playing those when you can make money off mindless speculators that want to buy an IPO on nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Agreed there. Agreed. So what about pork? What the heck is going on with pork futures here? And maybe I should go to the supermarket and buy up some more bacon and pork roll and Canadian bacon and sausages and whatever else I can find.
All right. We're on the verge of a global pork shortage. And Jerry, you and I have talked many times in the last 6 months on African swine flu.
Yeah, you've been a raging bull on pork for the past 6 months, for sure, for that reason.
Yeah. And this disease kills a hog in a matter of days. A couple of days, the hog's done. There are no vaccines. And since it's a virus, there are no cures for it.
Yeah.
And so it is now struck in every province in China. Now, these estimates, Terry, are about worth what any estimate is worth.
Yeah.
We think it's going to cost China 200 million hogs this year.
Yeah, that's a lot of production. That's a lot of Mushu pork there, Ned.
That is. I mean, Chinese like their pork.
Hey.
And they have been importing all of a sudden pork from the United States. So far this year, in 2019, they have bought 51,000 tons of U.S. pork.
It's a lot of pork.
Last year they bought 17,000. It's a giant jump. And more importantly, on order, when you look at export numbers, USDA gives us two numbers: that which has been exported and that which has been sold but not exported. They have on order another 115,000 tons of pork. And last year at this time, they had 4,000 tons. So they are scrambling to buy pork wherever they can get it. And the only place you can get pork in this world right now readily is in the Americas, North, Central, and South America. And the U.S. is the champion pork producer. We have the best genetics, the best pork farmers in the world. And so pork prices have doubled from their 52-week low.
Wow.
The same dynamic that problem is spilling over into other markets.
Mm-hmm.
Beef in the United States hit a 52-week high yesterday. Feeder steers, and to help our listeners, you buy a feeder steer, you feed it a bunch of corn, and when it's fat enough, then it becomes beef. Feeder steers are the input. Those prices are at a 52-week high. So the whole animal protein complex, pork, beef, chicken, is a hot market right now. And the fundamental problem, Gary, is that meat production is price inelastic. In other words, no matter what the price of pork does, it still takes 4 months for a mommy sow to produce a piglet, and then another 6 months or so. I mean, you can't rush the mother-baby process. It doesn't pay any attention to prices. Cattle, it's 9-month gestation period, just like humans.
Right.
Now, as a consequence, the animal protein stocks have been screaming. The leader is up 20% this month.
Wow.
That's JBSAY. The problem is that we don't have a lot of animal protein companies in the world, and there are no meaningful ones in the United States. These are all foreign companies. JBS is out of Brazil, has an ADR that trades here, JBSAY.
Right.
That's been a hot stock. And one of the reasons it's hot is the company is in final negotiations, we hope, with the SEC to solve their problems that go back years ago in Brazil, at which point they will list this stock in the United States. We would then have a USA-listed company, and JBSA owns Pilgrim's Pride and Swift. The next one on the list is let me get it so I give you the right symbols. I do with that page. MRRCY. That is the world's second largest beef exporter.
Mm-hmm.
It's also based in Brazil, but they own National Beef here in the United States. If you live somewhere where you have National Beef hot dogs or whatever, that's who owns it. The other one is BRFS, which is the largest chicken exporter out of Brazil. That stock is on a tear this morning. And so those stocks aren't your run-of-the-mill type names.
No, they're not.
That's where the action is. And this really isn't coming as a surprise, because animal proteins were probably where the world was going to hit food shortages first. And so
Correct.
These are some stocks to look at. And the problem, like I said, is we don't have any Americans. We've got plenty of social networking nonsense, but we don't have fundamental things like producing cows and pigs and chickens.
We going back to that though?
There's going to be an attempt, but it's expensive to get in the business. You don't just become a pig farmer one day. It takes a big investment, and a big investment in protecting that asset from disease. Right now, the pig farmers in the United States are scared. This month was supposed to be the World Pork Expo. 20,000 people arrived in Des Moines, Iowa.
I'm sorry, I missed
Talk
it.
about pigs.
Sorry, I'm not going to be there.
They canceled it because they're afraid somebody traveling from a foreign country would bring this virus with them on their clothing
Oh my God.
or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
We'll have to wait till next year, I guess. Oh, they could have done a video conference, right? And then nobody would have had to come to Des Moines at all.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So,
What are we going to do, Ned? What are we going to do?
I'm going to pay my bacon is worth it.
Yeah.
So what was it the comedian said? Maybe bad for you, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, maybe it'll be harder for the politicians in D.C. to give pork to their donors now that there's going to be a shortage, right?
Yeah, I don't think they will have a shortage, Kerry. One thing, fiscal responsibility is not running rampant in Congress right now.
You don't think?
No, well, the first spending plan the Democrats came up with in the House was a $2 trillion increase in spending over the next 10 years.
Mm.
And we're going to do things like cancel all student debt.
It's a great idea.
I think so.
Yeah. Let's just cancel all debt and screw the banks, right? What's going to happen?
I don't think so.
Well, a lot of that debt is uncollectible, in my opinion, they shouldn't cancel it. They should just make it so you can get rid of it in bankruptcy, right?
That's right. Or put the colleges on the hook for part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's too bad. No, but most of the debt that's out there has taken place because you saw that genius Maxine Waters was asking the bankers from Wells, Jamie Dimon, and the big banks, what's the deal with student loans? And they said, we don't make them anymore. Obama took over the industry in 2010. And of course, the moron that she is, she was caught flat-footed. So it's all just government money. It doesn't count anyway. It's a debt we owe to ourselves. So let's just forget about it. But I don't think they should just give it away. But there is no reason in this world why student loan debt should not be dischargeable in bankruptcy. Wait 5 years till after you've graduated from college. But after that, you should be able to take it out in bankruptcy. And that would force them to, right now, they won't reschedule it, and you just owe it forever and ever and ever. So let's just get rid of this stuff. I'm in favor. And while we're at it, let's get rid of student loans altogether and let the colleges charge a market rate for their educational services. And it either gets paid or it doesn't. And put the colleges on the hook for the debt as well, right?
Right. If the colleges were on the hook for 5 or 10% of the loan,
or all,
you would see a lot less of these junk degrees.
Well, better yet, let's do a sliding scale. Let's say for year one, you're 95% on the hook. For year two, 90, and it goes down 5% every year. So if the guy never graduates, you're on the hook for most of it. For one thing, they would pay a lot more attention to those struggling students to make sure they didn't fail out and they got their degrees, right? And they'd be a lot more discriminating about taking people who they know have no chance of ever graduating as well. Sounds good to me.
Or getting a job with the degree they get.
Yeah, exactly. So there would be a whole reality check. Trump's trying to do it. It'll never happen. The educational industrial complex, way too strong, employs millions, underemploys millions of people throughout the country, overpays them, underemploys them. Anyway, Ned, so let's look forward to see what happens to gold on Thursday. Let's keep buying our pork futures at the supermarket. You think it's too late to make any money in the agricultural commodity space?
No, like I said, it takes so long to produce a pig or a calf. The supply situation cannot change for years. It's just structural. Mother Nature.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm buying it. I agree with you. I can see your logic. Hey, again, let's just tell them where to find you, Ned. We always have them here. The Value View Gold Report and the Agri-Food Value View. By far, Ned, your Agri-Food Value View report is so far ahead of the rest of the crowd that there's no point even mentioning anybody else. You're always on top of these commodities, the underlying stocks that can be in the best position to profit from it. And so check out the Agri-Food Value View. And while you're at it, check out financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Sign up for a newsletter. Emails kl@kerrylutz.com. If you are listening on any platform, YouTube, podcast, whatever, subscribe, like, and share. Really helps us a lot when you do that. Where else could you hear Ned Schmidt's view on pork 6 months before it happened? It's all coming to pass just as Ned said it would. And that's even more reason why you need to listen to FSN. You need to support the show. Ned, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you again real soon.
Thanks a lot, Kerry. Take care.
FSN Radio. It's all about what's next. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and sign up for your free weekly newsletter. You'll also get 3 free reports. The Financial Survival Network. It's all about what's next.